Good evening. My name is Clyde Stillman, and I am the Executive Director of the Education Service Center, Region 11. It is such a pleasure to be part of this special event tonight where we will honor the Teacher of the Year winners from each of the school districts within Region 11. I hope you know that we look forward to this event all year because it gives us a much-needed boost right before the beginning of a new school year. As you are aware, circumstances outside of our control have caused us to change our plans for a face-to-face banquet and instead celebrate your achievements virtually. This decision did not come lightly. In fact, throughout the entire history of the awards program, ESC Region 11 has only postponed or altered its plans for this recognition event one other time, and that occurred back in 2001 when our event was scheduled on 9/11. Regardless of the manner in which we announce our winner, we want you to come away from this program knowing that you are so very important to your students, your school district, and your community. Before we get started, I want to introduce to you our event sponsor. Almost 20 years ago, we partnered with EECU to enhance our awards ceremony and make it something really special for the teachers that we wanted to honor. EECU is an organization that supports public education and looks for ways to shine the light on the great things that teachers do. So we were thrilled that they joined forces with us to make this event special. Let's now hear from Lonnie Nicholson, President and CEO of the EECU, who has a few words of welcome for you.
Hello everyone, I'm Lonnie Nicholson, President and CEO of EECU Credit Union. On behalf of our Board of Directors, our staff, and myself, I'd like to thank the Region 11 Education Service Center for once again allowing EECU to host the Teacher of the Year Award ceremony. The Service Center Board, Dr. Stillman, and staff are to be commended for their commitment to support our local educators. As many of you may know, EECU was started 85 years ago by a small group of Fort Worth teachers, and today we serve over 230,000 members. Our respect and appreciation for educators has deep roots and has grown since our founding. With that in mind, let me be the first to congratulate this year's Teacher of the Year recipients. This year's event is definitely a first for all of us. Who would have thought this time last year that the event would be virtual due to a worldwide pandemic? Perhaps all the more reason to celebrate some very special people who are not only amazing educators, but who continue to rise to the challenge of their profession during unprecedented times. You're not only inspiring us and motivating us, but you push us to be more than we ever thought we could be. So today we celebrate you, and we thank you for what you do and how you do it. We wish you could be there to shake your hand and personally thank you, but since we can't, we look forward to sharing a warm handshake in person in the future. Congratulations again to all this year's Teacher of the Year recipients, a recognition well deserved.
Thank you, Lonnie. Now I'd like to introduce Lori Burton, our Teacher of the Year Coordinator for Region 11.
Good evening, teachers. I am so excited to be celebrating with you tonight. But before we start announcing our awards, I wanted to recognize a very special group of people, our judges. These wonderful educators have donated their time to carefully read through all of your essays and then select our winners. Our selection panel is made up of teachers, some of whom are former winners of this very competition, and administrators who genuinely love this awards program because it allows them the unique opportunity to get a sneak peek into your classroom and see what you do best. At this time, I'd like to introduce Kyle Christensen, one of our judges this year and also a former Region 11 winner of this award.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to welcome you on behalf of the judges. This was my first year to serve as a judge for this event, and it was so inspiring to read your applications and hear about all the wonderful things you're doing in your classroom. This year we had 71 candidates from small, medium, and large districts within Region 11 who participated in the program. It was such a privilege to read about your thoughts and challenges and to celebrate your successes. Each of you wrote something in your essays that touched our hearts, and we know that you touched the hearts of your students in the same way. Please know how difficult it was to pick our winners tonight because you're all winners in our book. We applaud you for all that you do.
Well, now you've met all of the behind-the-scenes folks who helped to make this event happen. But we know that you really want to meet our winners. So let's talk about how we're going to proceed. As part of the state selection process, we're required to choose just one elementary and one secondary teacher to represent Region 11 at the state level of the competition. But we wanted to recognize more of you on this special occasion. So we're going to announce awards for the judges' favorite essay in each category. These essays may feature a touching memory, a clever theme, or a humorous story that really resonated with our judges. So we will begin with these wonderful essay awards. Let's get started.
After completing several sections of the application that ask for information on each teacher's background, areas of certification, resume information, and biographical data, candidates were asked to answer 5 essay questions. Essay question number 1 is the lesson plan essay. It asks teachers to describe a content lesson or unit that defines them as a teacher. Explain how they engage students of all backgrounds and abilities in the learning. Discuss how that learning influenced their students. And reveal how their beliefs about teaching are demonstrated in this lesson or unit. Let's hear what our elementary essay winner had to say.
The first unit that comes to mind is an integrated social studies and science unit. It gives students opportunities to learn integrated standards while sharing pieces of their cultural background with the class. My class this year is made up of 21 students, many of whom come from uniquely diverse and difficult situations, often fleeing persecution in their native countries in search of safety and freedom. I currently teach students from the Congo, Egypt, Mexico, one who is on his 3rd foster care placement, and 2 with fathers who have been deported. Instead of ignoring their diversity, I strive to create lessons that capitalize on the potential it provides. This unit initially focused on weather patterns, which the students usually love because they have plenty of background knowledge from which to pull. I decided to pair it with landforms this year, and I came up with the idea that students could study the landforms in the United States and then compare them to landforms in the countries in which they were born or where their families still reside. Students then were asked to look up the forecast in their countries so that the class as a group could compare this information to our weather in North Texas and more specifically, our city. I used EduSmart to introduce the very basics of weather patterns. Then, we watched live videos of meteorologists from the DFW area to gain an understanding of how 5-day forecasts are used. The class, working in groups, then used Chromebooks to research current 5-day forecasts in different regions of the U.S. Prompted by a question from one of my students, I decided to let students research the weather in their birth countries, along with how geographical landforms could affect weather patterns. It was amazing to see the eagerness of the students each day. They could not wait to share the weather their family was experiencing, wherever in the world they might be. And the stories of the famous landforms many had visited were wonderful to hear. One student even Skyped his father at home to remind him that he would not be needing a jacket since it was going to be 83 and sunny in Mexico that day. Using a graphic organizer, the student groups took on responsibilities to prepare their report for the class. Each group member took on a different role: researcher, writer, artist, and reporter. After a week of researching, students used Flipgrid, a social learning platform, to present their findings to the class as meteorologists while pointing at specific locations on a map projected on the smartboard. This unit resulted in a cross-curricular endeavor. Diversity is often viewed as an obstacle that must be overcome. However, I've learned from lessons like this to view it as an advantage. This unit of study allowed my students to view their unique differences as both an opportunity and a strength. For example, the classroom discussion with my students prompted them to gather more information from their classmates about different parts of the world from which they came. It promoted a true empathy about the different cultures represented in the class and a strong curiosity to learn more. It's important for students to have opportunities to study, review, and discuss their own cultural background within their learning and with other class members. This encourages them to embrace their differences, value the challenges they have overcome, and not be afraid to share their experiences with others. I believe we must celebrate the diversity of all our students. Each one brings their own story to the learning environment, and from each of these stories, we are all able to learn. I remind my students of how lucky they are to be part of such a diverse group, and explain to them that the most successful teams in the world are the most diverse. A simple lesson plan focused on weather patterns can provide an educational platform for enlightenment about landforms around the world, and ultimately lead to conversations about what makes us all uniquely different, but also the same.
Our elementary essay winner for the lesson plan essay is Mary Holmes from Birdville ISD. Now, let's hear what our secondary essay winner had to say on this topic.
In the fall, I do a War and Politics unit. During the course of this unit, my anchor text is The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. I use several supplemental pieces as well to cover the big ideas O'Brien touches on in his novel. For example, we examine the way Vietnam soldiers didn't receive the respect or support that those who fought in other wars did, or the way soldiers have a difficult time acclimating to their home life after returning from war, or the lack of understanding people have for what the soldiers experienced and their inability to provide them empathy, which often led to homeless veterans and some who even committed suicide. We also look at the way that 4 different presidents maintained different reasons to keep sending soldiers to Vietnam. Aside from the rich discussions we have regarding O'Brien's style of writing, like through his use of verisimilitude and metafiction to make the stories relatable and real, these other topics become focal points in our in-depth discussions. One of my favorite lessons during this unit is our study of MLK's Beyond Vietnam. The lesson takes place over the course of a week. I divide the speech up among groups of 3 to 4 students depending on class size. Each group is responsible for reading and annotating their section by breaking down King's arguments through his rhetorical choices. They also find understanding for how his words would have been received by the audience in his time. Each group presents their findings to their classmates, allowing their peers to take notes and ask questions. The students become the teachers, and each group gets to take on this role. Once all groups have presented, we have a Socratic discussion centered around this essential question. Why did King speak out against the United States' involvement in Vietnam when he risked doing harm to his status as a civil rights movement leader, as well as harming the movement itself? I also give them 7 sub-questions that help them dig deeper into this topic. To assist them in preparation for the Socratic discussion, they have several articles by various authors over the course of history, arguing different perspectives, along with their notes from the Beyond Vietnam text. On the day of the discussion, they arrive to class and find an inside-out circle with a twist. The students inside the circle engage in typical Socratic format, while the students outside the circle comment via computer through an application called YoTeach. The application allows for a discussion to appear on my Promethean board. By using 2 levels of conversation, all students are engaged in the discussion. Halfway through the class, they switch from inner circle to outer and vice versa. These 2 forms of communication allow my more shy students to talk freely through the computer screen, but still pushes them out of their comfort zone for the face-to-face discussion. In turn, it allows my more talkative students a platform they're comfortable with, while also forcing them to actually listen to their peers and respond in accordance when using the technology. The result of doing this early in the year allows for me to set the stage for what our discussion should look like, and illustrates the importance of their own preparation in the process for the lesson to be successful. As you may have noticed, this is completely student-led. I stand in the background as support, but they run the show. By allowing them to own their part in the learning process, I am equipping them to function successfully in a world that will not always treat them kindly. I teach them tolerance for others' opinions and how to effectively communicate their own ideas in an intellectual and respectful manner. I teach them to actually listen to each other's arguments before responding. I teach them to educate themselves on current politics and the economy in global perspective, and to understand the battles people still fight because of race, religion, and gender. I teach them the importance of things like voting and getting involved in their communities by volunteering and being citizens who are exacting change rather than citizens who complain for things to be changed. In the grand scheme of things, the time I spend with them is minuscule compared to the amount of life they have ahead of them. So I spend our few months together preparing them to live in this world that paradoxically limits them communicatively, and trusting that they will treat the world and the people in it well.
Our secondary essay winner for the lesson plan essay is Jamie Reinhardt from Aledo ISD. Essay question number 2 is the culture essay. It asks teachers to describe a project or initiative that they have been involved in that contributed to the improvement of overall school culture. What was their role? How did they collaborate with others? And what is the status of this project today? Let's hear what our elementary essay winner had to say.
Early on in my teaching journey, children's literacy became a very important initiative of mine. As a first grader, I struggled with reading and was fortunate to have a great teacher to help me overcome my reading challenges. I remembered my teacher emphasizing how important reading and comprehension are in all aspects of learning. Now, as a teacher myself, I share her passion for children's literacy and continue to emphasize its importance. For many years, I have wanted to explore what I could do beyond the classroom to foster students' love of reading. In a classroom setting, students have many literary resources available for them to utilize. However, outside of the school setting, many students lack reading materials, in particular, books of their own. I have realized that there are factions of students who don't have books, magazines, or e-readers at home. My heart was heavy as the same students didn't have the means to participate in the school book fairs each year. I have seen firsthand how reading for leisure helps students improve their comprehension, greatly contributing to their overall academic success. I was compelled to take action. My husband and I began to fundraise by selling holiday hams and briskets to teachers and staff. Our goal was to raise enough money to buy a book for every student at our elementary school. I was overwhelmed with the gratitude and delight that students showed when receiving their own book to keep, some saying it was the only book they had ever owned. The students were so excited to start reading. Realizing the impact this had on the students' relationship with reading, we have continued this endeavor for the past 5 years. Still wanting to do more to emphasize the importance of reading, I began researching little community libraries and how they could be a conduit for all students to have free access to books year-round. Many students don't have the means to obtain books when school is not in session. The concept is to have a small, house-shaped box located in a community which holds free books for all to read. I received a grant for the cost of the materials. I created a blueprint and decided to paint the house the colors of our district's school spirit theme. I consulted with my principal on this project, and together we agreed on a great location for the library in the school's garden. Through the collaboration of dedicated individuals, we successfully established our little community library. The little library was announced through the school e-flyer that goes to parents explaining how to use this resource. Many teachers have taken their students out to the garden, explaining the benefits of using the community library. I didn't realize the impact that this little library would have on our community. It is visited quite often, and it is my sincere hope that each book exchange fuels a child's desire to find his or her love of reading, regardless of address, test score, or bank account.
Our elementary essay winner for the culture essay is Rhonda Front from Lake Dallas ISD. Now, let's hear what our secondary essay winner had to say on this topic.
At the beginning of the school year, our community faced a devastating tragedy. A family's home caught on fire, leaving 3 of our district students without a mother. One of my students was airlifted to a hospital with a nearby special burn victims unit. Fighting for her life, I felt compelled to organize a school-wide fundraiser to support her family and bring our community together. The event was a Pie a Faculty in the Face fundraiser that would take place during a pep rally, and the top 3 faculty members who raised the most money would get pied. My student, who was in critical condition, reminded me much of myself, and that she did not buy into the community culture of our school. Yet she is still a valuable member of our school's community, and this was a useful lesson to teach every student that once they are a part of our school district's community, we will always take care of them. Being a low-income school means that most school fundraisers don't generate significant revenue, and it takes weeks of planning. However, collaborating quickly with the district's finance office and the administration team, I had approval 3 days before the next pep rally to organize an event. My initial goal was to provide monetary relief to a family during their hardest time. Yet, I found myself engaging our student body to teach them that once you are a part of our school's community, we will always care for you. This was proven effective when I first predicted to raise around $200 to $300. However, the beautiful thing about low-income communities and schools is the culture of resiliency and call to action in how these students came together. Stunned, they raised over $1,300, proving that you don't have to be a popular kid or in a wealthy community to show true fellowship to a family in need. Today, my student and her father were released from the ICU Special Burn Victims Unit and allowed to return home. I remember how relieved the students were to hear the fantastic news that their peer had recovered. Even though many students did not have a personal relationship with her, the fundraising project enhanced our overall school culture and fellowship among students. I was shocked at the generosity of every student, parent, and faculty member who wanted to do more beyond the Pie in the Face fundraiser. Being able to be a part of bringing our community together involved donating every resource they could to help one of our community families cross the other side of this tragedy. I would not have been able to create a successful project of this scope without the immediate collaboration with various departments in the district. The speed and efficiency in organizing this project and bringing together our community and the hearts of our students created a long-lasting impact on our school's culture.
Our secondary essay winner for the culture essay is Camille Proffer from Castleberry ISD. Essay question number 3 is the community essay. It asks teachers to describe how they ensure that education transcends the classroom and describe specific ways in which they deliberately connect their students with the community. Let's hear what our elementary essay winner had to say.
I often consider how to make my students' learning relevant beyond the classroom so they have opportunities to reach our community and beyond, as well as learn to be global citizens. I've accomplished this in several ways. I use Seesaw, an online learning journal, to help students share their work with their peers, their parents, and other classes. Parents can see their students' work and leave comments. This helps build investment with parents as educational partners through the transparency of seeing what their students are working on in school. Every year, we also choose a community charity and involve our students. Furthermore, we hold several food drives to collect for people in need in our community. We also partner each year with our city to help connect our students with our community. When we studied our community in humanities at the beginning of the year, I worked with my team to develop a design challenge focusing on civil engineering and building towers. We took a walking field trip to observe towers in our community. Our students had the opportunity to observe water towers, the clock tower downtown, church steeples, interesting architectures on our main street, and towers used for advertisements for businesses in our community. After the students design and build their own towers in teams, I contacted the city's public library and asked if we could display the towers for our community. The students love going to the library to see their hard work on display. We also partnered with the City Parks and Recreations Department to do a unit on beavers, and city representatives shared how beavers impact our local environment at our city's lake. They learned about dams and draw connections to our city dam and its purpose in our community. I also taught my students how to use the app Anchor to record podcasts. After hearing older grades in our school district sharing their learning on podcasts, I researched how I could utilize this tool to help students share their thoughts and learning beyond our classroom and school. My goal was for the podcast to give students a voice, to help them synthesize their learning through discussion, to give them an opportunity to share their thinking with the world and to reflect on their learning. I received some guidance from our campus STEM technology integration coach and found Anchor to be fairly simple to use. I started by hosting the first episode and then had students volunteer to host or be interviewed. Students generated ideas for podcast topics during class and then voted on topics to use. Students wrote their own questions and learned how to record on an iPad. I was blown away by their ability to discuss their thoughts with each other. We even did an episode during distance learning. It was more challenging and had to be pieced together differently than usual, but they rose to the task and shared their thoughts on distance learning. I was incredibly proud of them.
Our elementary essay winner for the community essay is Jennifer Pettit from Grapevine Colleyville ISD. Now, let's hear what our secondary essay winner had to say.
The curriculum dictates that I teach students how to write analytically, how to read closely, and how to think deeply. Following a prescribed curriculum is easy. Making it meaningful is another story. So much of what I do hinges on relationships. In fact, relationships might be more fundamental to a student's education than the content itself because it's through positive relationships that students become receptive to new ideas. Connectivity not only helps them interpret character in literature, but it also helps them build character in their very real world. With this in mind, a couple of years ago, I decided to make time for meaningful content not found in our scope and sequence. I pushed the state standards to the side and focused instead on the standards I wanted my students to embody. On Fridays, for the last 5 minutes of class, I started showing videos to inspire my students. Some videos were about athletes, artists, and musicians with exceptional talent. Some videos were about people overcoming obstacles, like Shaquem Griffin, the Seattle Seahawks player with half an arm. Most of the videos, though, were from Steve Hartman, and they tended to highlight young people who make big differences with simple gestures. For example, one story featured a young lady who went to work with her mother, who was a nurse at a nursing home. While the girl was there and talking with the residents, she thought to ask them, if you could have any 3 things, what would they be? She was surprised that none of the residents wanted money or new hips. They just wanted simple things like Vienna sausages. The girls started a GoFundMe account, raised money, and began fulfilling their wishes. The class loved these videos. And after we watched this particular one, I said, you know, she's just like you. She saw a need and stepped up. The more we talked about it, the more empowered the students became, and service projects became a way to earn extra credit. It is now common to see students volunteering regularly, They help deliver school supplies to families living in poverty. They coordinate shifts to ring the Salvation Army bell at Christmas time. They assemble and stuff boxes to send overseas through a program called Carson Cares. They deliver water to fire stations and stuffed animals to police officers. They participate in the Big Idea, a contest sponsored by the school district and the Chamber of Commerce, which requires them to propose a product or service that will improve the community. The Friday videos, along with the love and service they inspire, are undoubtedly the highlight of each week, both for the students and myself. Although not covered directly in the district's curriculum, the life lessons learned are invaluable and leave immeasurable impressions that transcend textbooks.
Our secondary essay winner for the community essay is Shanna Healer from Arlington ISD. Essay question number 4 is the educational issues essay. It asks teachers to discuss what they consider to be a major public education issue today and describe how they demonstrate being a lifelong learner, leader, and innovator about this issue, both in and outside of the classroom walls. Let's hear what our elementary essay winner had to say.
Mental health is an issue that I think we have struggled with in our public education system, underestimating the role that it plays in success at school. However, I do believe we are working towards greater awareness and training for all adults who interact with students. This issue is of personal significance to me. I have a brother who is 12 years younger than I, and he has suffered from mental health issues since he was young. Growing up in a culture that does not discuss mental health, had no support systems in place, and relates it to how tough you are, he struggled with it in solitary until college, when he attempted to take his own life. If it was not for his roommate and friend, as well as the help of counselors who were available to him at the university here in the United States, he would not have learned how to manage his depression today. The thought of this close call lies with me in every interaction I have with my own children and students. My classroom starts Monday morning with Family Circle. This is when my students and I pass around a dice, which is named by them through a voting system, and we share something about our weekend, or something making us happy, sad, excited, or concerned. It is a time to share with your family. This sometimes takes up to 40 minutes, but it is time well spent. It allows children to talk about some really deep things and feel connected to something greater. It helps me get to know them beyond the walls of my classroom, assuring them that they have people who care and that they are not alone in anything they deal with. Family Circle makes my kids invested in the classroom community, and together with the Circle of Courage, teaches morals and relationship building. I truly believe this helps the kids do better academically in my class, even with up to 40 minutes less instruction time a week. We end our week with a special selection process where students vote for someone to be the student of the week. They must write a reason. These slips of kindness that they write about each other are saved by me, and at the end of the year, I give each student the slips with a letter talking about how these little acts of kindness meant something to others. Another way we look out for the well-being of our students is through the Behavior Emotional Social Team, known as BEST. I consider it an honor to be part of a team that looks out for the emotional health of children at our school. BEST also creates Why Try modules for homerooms on Wednesday, sharing and character education lessons with small group discussions, and a place for teachers to get to know their students in a different setting. Since joining my school district, I have accrued 128 district staff development credits, 168 Texas SBEC CPE credits, 135 flex time credits, and 60 GT credits. Every year, I ensure part of this includes mental health training.
Our elementary essay winner for the educational issues essay is Komal Punjabi from Carroll ISD. Now let's hear what our secondary essay winner had to say on this topic.
Quality of teaching and how to develop and maximize talented teachers is a major issue in public education, especially at the secondary level. The competition for students' attention has never been more fierce. More students are no longer ritually compliant to teacher and class demands. As a result, passionate, well-informed teachers who can capture students' interest and adapt readily to different learning styles, tools, and environments are at a premium. Classroom teachers also must recognize that we are at great risk of being commoditized by online learning. We need a public relations campaign promoting the value of the classroom experience, and we have to be ready to back it up with a quality product. At the same time, teachers need direction in developing their mastery of content and methods of delivery. We as teachers are often given non-negotiables for how we must do class, but the first and foremost non-negotiable should be to teach the course curriculum well. Unfortunately, the development of teachers often fails to patchwork group of mentors, department chairs, assistant principals, academic deans, and curriculum coordinators who often struggle to maintain a cohesive and consistent voice of guidance as a teacher develops professionally. Moreover, the voices of guidance and points of emphasis tend to change regularly. As a result, the burden falls primarily back on teachers themselves to direct their own development as professional educators. Therefore, once the school year starts, teachers feel as if they have set sail on a solitary journey, driven more by thoughts of survival rather than growth. With that in mind, I strive to demonstrate the commitment to developing myself as a professional educator. During my teaching career, I have earned the Master Math Teacher certification for the state of Texas. I completed a 2-week summer internship with Texas Instruments promoting STEM education. I have served as an AP statistics mentor and presenter with National Math and Science Institute for the last 2 years, during which time I have also served as an AP grader with the College Board. Finally, I have been a presenter at the statewide conference for the advancement of mathematics teaching. This year, I have also begun work towards obtaining a Master's of Statistics degree. Unfortunately, that required me to go back and take a Calculus 2 course in order to qualify for the program. However, I enjoyed being able to talk to my students about being a student again and experiencing the frustrations of trying to master difficult material. While my students seemed to take particular joy in the fact that one of their teachers was sharing their misery, I wanted them to see that I was striving to improve my knowledge and expertise so that I could be a better teacher. Students need to know that learning has no final destination, that we, as teachers, are just a little further down the path, but that we are still continuing on that path, growing as people and as professionals.
Our secondary essay winner for the educational issues essay is Mike Moore from Birdville ISD. Essay question number 5 is the State Teacher of the Year essay. It asks teachers to know that as the 2020 National Teacher of the Year, they serve as a spokesperson and representative for all teachers and students. What would their message be? What will they communicate to their profession and to the public? Let's hear what our elementary essay winner had to say.
64 years ago, a woman who herself had been born in a bathroom stall gave birth to a daughter. The child, one of many, was born without a father present and in poverty. She would one day have a daughter and a son who she too would raise in poverty. 3 generations of women shared more than poverty. Each female was born in Costa Rica, would be raped or sexually abused at some point in their lives, would witness the beatings that their mothers were subjected to, and would have at least one child out of wedlock. Except for one difference. The last of these 3 women received an education. She would go on to graduate high school, something which had never been done in her family. After her son was born, she would graduate college. And just this year, she earned her master's degree in education. The cycle of poverty and violence were finally broken. That last woman is me. I am not any stronger or smarter than these women before me. On the contrary, my mother was the smartest of all. She realized that if my destiny was to be any different from hers, I needed an education. At that time, in a Latin country, I was guaranteed equal access to a free education. Public schools were the norm, and they were funded equally. It still wasn't equitable for all, as some students barely had what they needed to survive, while others were well off. But it was, at least, free and available, with relatively few funding differences between public schools. Today, more than ever, students need an education. Equal access is not really equal when one student has access to Wi-Fi and a laptop, and the other has merely a packet of pages for their distance learning. Have we now created less equity for those populations? What will be the long-term effects? Possibly, they will result in an increase in the number of dropouts for those marginalized populations, resulting in lower numbers of them going to college. This could be followed by a reduction of those landing higher paying jobs, which would allow better access to change the system. It may seem that my words are a reaction to current events, but I know what the other option is when you don't get an education. My mother pushed me because she believed I could do better, that I could break the cycle. I pushed myself through work, caring for my son, and going to school. I push my children. As educators, we have to do the same for each of our students. First, we must love those children and accept them because of who they are and what they have lived. Then, we must ensure that we offer them the best version of ourselves. Mediocre teachers, teachers who are not willing to change how they have always done things, teachers who resent the student who misbehaves, or teachers who push a struggling student onto others, cannot possibly provide equity in education. We must be willing to fight fiercely and advocate for our students. An emotionally invested advocate can be the first step to attaining resources the students need to learn. My family was lucky enough to live abroad for several years. During that time, my husband's job paid for my son's private education. My elementary-age son reveled in the science labs that allowed him to learn about fermentation by creating wine, and in the field trips that allowed him to practice his French in France. Students' interests were cultivated. When I returned to the classroom in the U.S., I wondered what it would be like for all students to have the same opportunities. I know of teachers who would readily provide for all their students' needs if it were possible. In their minds, we would buy Wi-Fi towers to provide internet access and laptops for each student. They would hire optometrists to provide glasses for each student who won't ever read if they don't get glasses. Those same teachers would take students on field trips and update the schools. And then, maybe we could say that we are providing equal access and equity in education. Of course, this is not the reality. Therefore, we must be game changers. As with many social issues facing us today, we must address the root causes, but also treat the symptoms that are present today.
Our elementary essay winner for the State Teacher of the Year essay is Connie Dorosky of Kennedale ISD. Let's hear what our secondary essay winner had to say on this topic.
In America, we've seen a decline in the nation's respect for, the funding of, and the value placed on education. Politicians who have never set foot in a public school classroom slash budgets, vilify teachers, and then point at an uneducated populace as if their actions had no direct impact on the outcome. We are embroiled in testing environments that suck the love of learning out of our classrooms for students and teachers alike, while making state and federal government money. The respected role of the educator is chipped away by politicians, vendors, and parents as the workload of those teaching is increased without adequate compensation. Schools have gone from places of learning and exploration to scapegoats for society's ills. Is it any wonder that those without an education do not see themselves at any disadvantage, when the alternative is a school that is a political battleground, where the true purpose of an education is lost in tests, measurements, and poor public opinion? Teachers are leaving the field in droves. Education is bleeding out. Who will save it? And save it we must. The teacher, because it is the teacher whose heart beats to hear those aha moments, whose pride rivals the parent as a graduate moves his tassel, and whose frustration at the current status quo knows the impotent fury of those oppressed and maligned for far too long. We must rise up and take back our classrooms, our playgrounds, and the very dignity of our profession. We must remove those programs, politics, and money-making schemes that do not uplift and empower students. We must fight for every square inch of our schools, our government, and our students' futures. We must demand elected officials who will support and improve our educational system. We must partner with our communities and our parents to provide the education each child deserves and place them on the path that brings not just success, but fulfillment. We must hold each other accountable for changing those practices that are not what's best for students, and we must be grateful to those who will help us be accountable. We must partner with parents and bring our communities into our classrooms, not just our football stadiums. We must move out of the past and into the future, a future that calls for flexibility, a balance of trade and college, a balance of academics and real-world experiences, a balance of hands-on work and technology use, and the education of the heart and mind together. We must remove prejudice and bigotry, providing equal access to opportunity for all of America's students. We must hire good teachers and administrators and then treat them accordingly. We must put our money where our mouths are and pay our teachers a salary commensurate with their education, their effort, and the importance of their work. We must laud districts that lead with the student in mind and help those that do not. We must put our overalls on, lace up our boots, and get to the very serious work of repairing the damage to the institution of education, from the highest walls of Washington, D.C. to the living rooms of our hometowns. Our children's futures, the very future of our nation, depend on it.
Our secondary essay winner for the State Teacher of the Year essay is Kim Estes from Cleburne ISD. Now, it's time to meet our two regional winners. We'll start with the elementary winner. When our judges make the final selection of the person who will be our Region 11 Elementary Teacher of the Year, they pick their favorite essay submitted by that teacher to read at the banquet. The essay that the judges chose from tonight's winner is the State Teacher of the Year essay. As you will recall, this essay asks the teacher to share his or her message to the profession and to the public. Here is what our elementary teacher of the year wrote.
My grandparents were educators during segregation. As I reflect on conversations that I've shared with my grandfather, I can only imagine the amount of courage and fight it must have taken to rally against educational inequalities in the South during the 1960s. Yet, my grandparents remained advocates for students who understood the world around them as unfair and unjust. Public education is ever evolving, and there is, inarguably, still work to do. We must be attentive to the increasing challenges that our scholars are facing today. I often think, how could I not carry my grandparents' torch after all they have faced? How could I not use my voice to help my scholars discover their own? I have pictures of both my grandparents and great-grandparents posted near my classroom desk as a reminder each day to make choices that reflect courage. I pay special attention to a picture of my great-grandfather who worked as a custodian at a segregated school for Blacks. I remain in awe of the picture of my great-grandmother who worked in the school cafeteria after giving birth to her 17th child. Tough conversations about race are entering our schools. My message is that we must be courageous enough to embrace those tough conversations, to unlock pathways that will unveil the common thread. This is our work. It's a message worth sharing. When I think about tough conversations, I recall a specific conversation that I had with a male colleague. We just had a leadership team meeting that unveiled that the majority of our office referrals and disciplinary actions were assigned to African American males. That meeting presented statistics that concerned us. After that meeting, we had a lengthy conversation about how we could somehow create stronger bonds between our scholars and our teachers. We were vulnerable and shared our own childhood memories while making connections along the way. Our questions changed from, why do children do what they do, to what happened to them? In hindsight, we practiced being courageous. That conversation shed light on what could happen if we welcome uncomfortable dialogue to change the narrative of how we as educators support each other's growth, all leading to student growth and richer school experiences. I vividly remember when my drive for social action began. It was during my internship with the Children's Defense Fund's Freedom Schools program in Fort Worth, Texas, an initiative that is inspired by the civil rights movement. Every morning, we pulled together during a time called Harambe, where we chanted, cheered, and danced. I witnessed the call to action that Harambe warranted. Our accelerated society is driven by freedom of speech on social media platforms. Therefore, we must direct our attention to welcoming tough conversations among educators to unmask implicit biases. By doing so, we have a better understanding of ourselves and our scholars. I am a proud graduate and even more proud that our district has made gains in the cultural proficiency journey by creating spaces for tough conversations and opportunities to grow. It's a shared belief that we have the power as educators to positively change the trajectory of our scholars' lives. Although we are far from the finish line, I am committed to lifelong learning because I understand the impact it has on our scholars. I often recall those conversations with my grandfather when leading dialogue with colleagues and my scholars. I remember asking him, "How did you encourage your students to remain hopeful?" He exhaled, "I was present." I hope that those courageous acts that were shown in the 1960s are alive in me today. We must know that we cannot do this work without proactive thinking. Education is a powerful tool alone. Coupled with collective effort and courageous acts, it becomes a force that can be infused into our scholars. I desperately want all my scholars to understand how powerful their voices are. It is the same thing I want for my own son. There are times when our scholars speak so clearly. We, as educators, must remain humble enough to listen. I want my scholars to feel fearless and confident, even when it seems too tough. Our scholars should welcome voices of all frequencies, no matter if it's a loud cheer or a subtle whisper. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the little voice at the end of the day that says, "I'll try again tomorrow." Mary Ann Radmacher. Be courageous, even when it's tough. We are better because of it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this year's Region 11 Elementary Teacher of the Year is Alexis Miller from Louisville ISD.
Hello, I'm Kevin Rogers, Superintendent of Schools for Louisville ISD. On behalf of Louisville ISD and our Board of Trustees, I am proud to congratulate Mrs. Alexis Miller of Southridge Elementary on being named the Region 11 Elementary Teacher of the Year. For Alexis to be selected for this honor out of the 77 outstanding educators representing Region 11 is a tremendous feat, but I'm not surprised. Each and every day, Mrs. Miller gives her all to serve and support the needs of our students, or as she calls them, scholars. She's a champion for public education and is one of our district's very best. In fact, she was also one of our very best students, graduating from Louisville High School. We are lucky to have someone like her in the classroom, not just teaching, but connecting with and inspiring our next generation of leaders. The impact she has made on our students is immeasurable. We thank Region 11 for the recognition of this outstanding educator, and we thank Mrs. Miller for shaping the lives of students and for serving LISD. Alexis, congratulations. I know your family and LISD could not be more proud.
The essay that the judges chose from tonight's secondary winner is also the State Teacher of the Year essay. Here is what our Secondary Teacher of the Year wrote.
As the 2021 National Teacher of the Year, my message is that life requires a community. You do not have to have all the answers. You really don't. All the successes I have had in my life are a direct result of my colleagues, friends, and family. Therefore, we should choose not to stand alone, but instead to rely on those who are wiser, more experienced, or just able to reframe what once was considered a burden into welcome opportunities for growth. As a mother, I learned long ago that I couldn't be everything to my daughters. There were times they needed the never-ending patience of grandparents or the silliness of hanging out with Dad. For me, this was a devastating truth to accept. I had put unrealistic expectations on myself to meet all my daughter's needs. However, that's not realistic. Yes, I had an essential role, but I just wasn't enough. They needed and deserved more. They needed a community. Once I accepted this, I wasn't so defeated. I was able to embrace the joy of being mom, and I left the guilt behind. I translated this hard-earned truth to teaching. Teaching not only requires community, teaching is community. However, to be what our students need, we must become vulnerable. This is a big ask because teachers have the misconception that we must appear invincible. We're respected for our knowledge and our expertise, hence, we must not show weakness. Cue teacher burnout. Seasoned teachers are becoming the unicorns of education. We must let go of the perception that we are safe behind our isolated fortifications and instead reach out to others. This ushers in new ideas and creates opportunities and learning experiences for ourselves and our students. While I haven't shed the traditional role of a teacher, I choose to look at it a different way. I refuse to be a martyr. I admit that I cannot give every student what I consider to be adequate individual attention, especially in their writing. From this shift in mindset, I reached out to the district instructional coaches. Collaboratively, we transformed writing conferences from a mentorship on writing to a collaboration of equals. The bonds formed engaged students in real discussions and developed relationships that will carry from this year into the next. The coaches met the needs of my students in a way that I alone never could. As a result, coaching has become an integral part of everything I do. From collaborating on lessons to bridging gaps with students, I'm constantly looking to others for guidance. If we shut our doors because we have too much to do, we drown in isolation. The misconception of knowing it all is dishonest and lonely. So I started going room to room every day and dragging colleagues out because we needed to break free from the facade of perfection and learn to lean on each other. Now we grumble when we cannot have lunch together. We talk, play trivia, and tell stories that no one outside of education would ever believe could be true. Days come when we express frustrations, but they are met by seasoned advice, instructional support, or occasionally a well-needed hug. This didn't happen overnight, but it was what we needed. We opened our doors and became a community. Right now, our schools consist as a community of learners living individual lives. We refuse to show weakness, thus we don't let others in. No wonder our kids are so afraid of failure, because we refuse to let them see it in us. So I've dedicated myself to try new things. Sometimes they work, and sometimes they don't. But we all gain something from the experience. As I keep evolving, my students are learning to embrace failure. When they fail, they look to their community for help, just like me. Life is messy and collaborative, but you have to shed your fears and open yourself up. Therefore, I challenge you to open your door. Look for ways to bring others in and create your own community. In order to do this, you have to put yourself out there and expose your areas of need. I've found my people, my tribe. Now it is up to you to step out and find yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, this year's Region 11 Secondary Teacher of the Year is Lisa Day from Northwest ISD.
All right, first of all, let me personally congratulate every teacher of the year tonight. Folks, you're awesome. You're making a difference for every child in your school district, for every superintendent, for every principal that's on this Zoom tonight. We are so proud that you're part of our school district. So thank you for doing what you do. Lisa Day, we love you. Those of you who don't know Lisa, folks, she's a teacher. That is the highest compliment that I can pay Lisa Day. She is a teacher. She absolutely loves her children. She takes great steps to make them feel loved, to make them feel important, and to make them feel that they have worth. And that's what a teacher does. And Lisa shows up at Northwest High School and does that every single day. People and kids just gravitate to her because of her personality, because of her love for what she does. And we could not be more proud. On behalf of the Northwest ISD Board of Trustees and the faculty and staff of Northwest Independent School District, we could not be more proud to have her as a teammate for Northwest. So Lisa, again, we love you for everything that you do for our children, and we're so proud of you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Bryce, Board President of ESC Region 11. What an exciting night we've had, and I'm so inspired by all of the wonderful things that you are doing to make your students successful. In this very unusual time in which we find ourselves, we're so proud and comforted to know that you're shaping our future every day in your classrooms. From all of us at Region 11 and EECU, we thank you for what you do for your students each and every day. We congratulate you on the honors that have been shared tonight, and we wish you the very, very best for an outstanding new school year. Good night.